So we shall be talking in the next available edition about the urgency of the need to provide for animals that are sick in this country. And we shall be talking about that extensively, and we shall try to raise it as widely as possible. In the meantime, just a very short reference to the interview that Nadine Dorries gave under the banner of Weekend Lunch or Lunch with the FT. Let's see what Nadine Dorries has said. She said, Nadine Dorries is featured in the Financial Times Weekend FT, Lunch with the FT, Nadine Dorries. 11 minutes before my lunch with Nadine Dorries, is due to begin. It is cancelled. The message comes by phone. I know it's fucking irritating, says the ringer of bad news, a chap called Pierce, who introduces himself as Doris's agent. The problem is that Doris is finishing a book and would breach her publishing deal by speaking to me. She's not perfect, she forgot. She's in a state of parda. What? Imperfect? I get. But the idea of Doris in a state of parda stretches plausibility. It would be like an ice cream in a state of gas, or a traffic cone in a state of panic. Doris is almost by definition not in parda. Since being elected to Westminster in 2005, she has been out there laying something out, winding someone up. She taunted David Cameron and George Osborne as posh boys who don't know the price of milk. Brought into Boris Johnson's cabinet, she was among the last loyalists as his government combusted. Anti Brexiteers pounced on her provocations, which arrived more regularly than any British train. The minister in charge of social affairs said On which note, I tell Pierce, wouldn't it be ironic if she went back on her commitment to lunch? He gives up trying to silence the unsilenceable. I'll talk to Nadine. Nadine arrives in the small Italian restaurant 20 minutes later. I'll probably read this if the connection stays. I don't know whether the connection will stay because it keeps going. You got me in trouble, she smiles disarmingly. This is the reality of the outgoing member of parliament for Mead Bedfordshire. She is more personable, more nuanced than her viral moments suggest. She's never been just a loudmouth. She grew up poor, worked as a nurse, then founded a childcare business. She told the company for seven figures, sorry, said that again. She sold the company for seven figures and became an author, selling 3 million copies of her novels. I'm Liverpool Irish. There is something in the Irish DNA that makes people write in a way that works. When she became a minister, officials expected madness, but Doris brought methods too, guiding policies, including a bill to regulate social media. She's a very compassionate person until she gets on Twitter, says a former colleague. Being underestimated is the story of my life. It works to my advantage every time. Who is the winner now after the peerage row? Because it is not Rishi Sunak or his political advisor James Forsyth, whose reputation is whose reputation is damaged. It's not mine. Who looks the loser? It's not me. Okay, so I'm not going into the lores. But I've got a lot of things happening in my life that are very productive. Has my reputation been tarnished? Am I seen as a lesser person? Am I going to lose three by elections? She defends Johnson. This week found guilty by a committee of lying to Parliament over pandemic parties. When I give you my loyalty to someone, that's it. I never veer from it. Could he come back? I don't think he will. Why would he come back? Most of the members of Parliament who voted to remove him would rather poke their own eyes out than admit they were wrong. But she argues since Boris was removed, Parliament has ground to a halt. It's a zombie Parliament. It's dead. Everybody is at home. There are no votes. She is still an MP, having delayed her departure, but is due to drive home to the Cotswolds midweek to water her tomatoes and cucumbers. Is this the way Britain's populist experiment ends? Not with a bang, but with a rush for honours and a well tended vegetable patch? Do you write nasty bits? Doris asks, reviewing the menu. She tells me that she agreed to this interview because I mentioned that my mum, like her, grew up in Liverpool. I'm distracted by someone walking past the window, topless. A woman or a man, says Doris, not phased enough to look out. I ask if the honor saga is the angriest she has been in politics. Doris chides me for the question. You wouldn't think a bloke was angry. How would she describe her state of mind? She concedes she is quite cross. Sunak has denied vetoing Doris's elevation to the Lords, but she says his team deliberately withheld that. She would need to promise to step down as an MP within 6 months. They knew I wouldn't be on the list because they hadn't given me the information to act to ensure that I was. I'm actually smarter than these guys in number 10. All they had to do was work with me. Why would they block her? It's to punish Boris. If you look at any, I'll read that again. If you look at my CB, I'm as entitled as anyone else to go to the Lords. In fact, far more entitled than some. Indeed, also on Johnson's peer list was his 29-year-old former junior aide. I'm not going to comment. Johnson even wanted a knighthood for his dad. Yeah, I don't know what was behind that. She orders mozzarella with grilled vegetables, and I go for a pizza with capers. The restaurant blasts out con and Spanish soft rock as compulsory side orders. The honors row appears to put the title into entitlement. It's unseemly at a time when the Conservatives have little to show for 13 years in power. Brexit is deemed a failure by voters. The economy is sluggish. Public services are straining. Have the Tories shelved enough? I'll read that again, not shelved, it's achieved. Have the Tories achieved enough? It's hard to say because of the war in Ukraine and the pandemic. She became a conservative because Margaret Thatcher gave her family the right to buy their council home. Today's families are unlikely to thank the Tories for housing policies, I suggest. Doris, who has three daughters in their 30s, agrees. People who are renewing their mortgages are in pain. I spoke to some yesterday whose mortgage is being renegotiated from 1.1% to 5.4%. Who is distraught? And we are not even building houses. So we should be building houses in rural constituencies like hers. There are lots of brownfield sites. Our problem is the developers who only want to go and buy the greenfield sites. Doris, who declined to serve under Liz Truss, has seen her own cause fizzle. Sunak dropped a plan to privatize Channel 4 and watered down the online harms bill. It's ironic. He hasn't even had the guts to do something about social media. And then he starts talking about regulating AI, that is artificial intelligence. Maybe the conservatives need a break from power. I think it's defeatist. The last time we had a break, it took us 15, 13 years to get in. If Labour reforms the voting system, there will never be a conservative government again. The food arrives. I was always quite supportive of Rishi, she claims, oddly. But he's behaved in such a way that's made me think what you see on the surface is all fake. As a child, Doris was so poor she had to borrow school shoes. Her father was too ill to work. He died alone when she was 20. She found his body at home a week later. Her only brother died in a road accident soon after. Loss made her defensive, and there are times when I've regretted that defensiveness. She had reason to distrust institutions too. She has recounted being abusive. I'll read that again. She had reason to distrust institutions too. She has recounted being abusive. She has reason to distrust institutions too. She has reason to distrust institutions too. So, I'm going to start reading the rest of the Financial Times interview with Nadine Dorries. As a former nurse, does she understand why nurses have been on strike? Actually, no. If everyone has got what they wanted, we'd be in a pretty dire state with inflation. I had to go out on dates to be fed when I was training to be a nurse. I was that cheap. It was only food, though. I'm not saying it should be that bad. She says the NHS could pay nurses more if it paid management consultants less, but argues ministers are stuck because David Cameron's insane reforms made the service independent. She was the health minister during the pandemic. What does she feel about the PPE contracts? Concern. I was bombarded by messages from people. So and so can get you 2 million test kits. I just passed them all on. But it's quite odd how some people seem to have managed to secure deals. The process was opaque to me. To make so much money in a pandemic was ethically wrong. She refers to a Tory baroness, Michelle Moon. What actually happened there? How did she get the contracts? No one flagged it past me. Some Tories blame the civil service for stymieing policies, not Doris. Everything comes down to leadership. My experience of the civil service is that if you value it and work with it, it works like nothing else. Stories of how Oliver Dowden, the culture secretary before her, had treated officials took her breath away slightly. The more junior you were, the worse it got. Dowden is now Deputy Prime Minister. How did that happen? He's a bloke who can't even speak at the dispatch box without reading notes. I have to keep pinching myself that she is talking about people in the same party. Doris despairs that the quality of MPs has seen a drastic drop since the 2009 expenses scandal. A lot of people say, "Ooh, I'm not going to put myself through that." She has been a one off, albeit not always in a good way. She told MPs that some supposed tower block residents in a Channel 4 reality show she'd appeared in were actually paid actors. When a Tory led committee found no evidence for the claim, she refused to withdraw it. She notes that the committee chair stepped down after misconduct allegations. I would go to my death saying I was right. She says the mum of one supposed actor later rang her to arrange a visit to Parliament. I can hear his mum's voice. I remember the conversation very well. In previous evidence, Doris could only vaguely remember the call, not enough to recall that conversation. This attitude starts to niggle. She insists Sunak is not a very clever guy. He came 200 and something in his year at Oxford, whereas Johnson came top of his year. This is wrong. Unlike Sunak, Johnson didn't even get a first class degree. Doris is defiant. You won't meet anybody cleverer. My pizza has enough salt to digest one of Johnson's Partygate explanations. Doris has abandoned a small mountain of mozzarella on her plate. It is both half finished and finished, a bit like Sunak's government. She and Johnson offered disruption. What if 7 years after the Brexit vote, the public has decided it is bored of that? She claims that Johnson was punished for pushing through Brexit, dragged down by the legal establishment, the media establishment, ITB, Sky, BBC, Your Paper, The Times, everybody. The Daily Mail. She now writes a weekly column for the Daily Mail. In the future, we will be closer to the European Union and no one will dare upturn the apple cart because of what happened to Boris. Or maybe Johnson just broke the rules and was held to account. Here lies a contradiction. For most of her life, Doris embodied individual responsibility. Now she lets Johnson off the hook. The two remain close. Johnson, an amateur artist, has painted a picture of his perfect cabinet with Doris in a red dress. Cringe moment. Doesn't she tell him he made mistakes? I do. I said to him a few weeks ago, it's not all about you, you know. He shriveled in the corner of a chair with this puppy dog look. Maybe she has become the establishment. I certainly haven't, because I get myself into trouble too often. I wonder why she is so keen to join the Lords, whose powers, as recently as 2018, she wanted to reduce. I do revere the Lords. Do you know why? They're so polite over there. It's like the opposite of the Commons. Polite. Acceptance matters to Doris. Even today, she feels class judgment. It's worse, but it's quieter. She says social mobility has ebbed since her youth. If you aspired, there was more equality of opportunity than there is today. I confess that I went to Winchester College. Huh? Are you Rishi's mate? But she isn't really at war with posh boarding schools. I send my girls to Ampleforth. How would Doris rank the five Tory prime ministers since 2010? David Cameron's big mistake was not going to Europe and negotiating a better deal. His second mistake was resigning when he did. It's a staggering rewrite. Doris called for Cameron to resign in May 2016, claiming he'd lied profoundly in the Brexit campaign. She even sent a note. I'll read that again. She even sent a no confidence letter. Were there no confidence letters? I don't think so, she says. He was a good prime minister. I think it was selfish of him to resign. Doris blurs fact and fiction so easily. I'm not even sure she notices. Her defensiveness, acquired through the. I'll read that again. Doris blurs fact and fiction so easily. I'm not even sure she notices. Her defensiveness, acquired through fire, seems to stop her questioning herself. Perhaps one day she will remember having liked Sunak. So, what is this doing? This connection is interrupting too much. So, I'll go back to the Financial Times, the last paragraph. 2 hours is enough to discover that Doris is her own coalition government, combative but vulnerable, kind but infuriating, outsider but insider. I'm just worried about all the horrible things you are going to write, she smiles. Whatever I write, whatever evidence I produce, I feel it won't change her mind. Is that horrible? No, I think she will take it as a compliment. So that is Henry Mans in the Financial Times. And the Melanzana, 140 West Bridge Road, Battersea, London Southwest 11. Buffalo mozzarella with grilled vegetables, £17 90 pence. Marinara pizza, £14 90 pence. House white Poggio, what is della Quercia? It's an Italian spelling anyway, £7 50. Lime and soda, £7 25. Ended because of too many interruptions, and I'll have to check why there have been so many disruptions to this. This is coming to an end at 10:23 GMT, but the length of this particular one is just under 30 minutes, 29 minutes 34 seconds.